All right, so welcome back. We have another lesson now, and that is based on transport in plants, or movement of substances or movement of molecules from cells to cells. So we're looking at diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. So to begin, diffusion. Diffusion is referring to the movement of particles or the movement of molecules along a concentration gradient. Now, what is this concentration gradient? The concentration gradient is referring to where you may have high substances in one area, high amount of substances or high concentration of substances in one area, and you have low concentration in another area. So the gradient is when it moves from where you have a lot of it to where you have less of it. So the movement is along a concentration gradient where you have plenty of the particles to where you have less of the particles. And this diagram is demonstrating that at the beginning, you have plenty on the left side and you have less amount of particles on the right side. So they are moving until each of the sides have equal amount. Each of the sides have equal amount and you say that it achieves equilibrium, meaning it's equal on both sides. After you achieve equilibrium, then there's no further movement or there's no net flow of movement of the particles. Particles might move, but they're not all going to move on one side. It will be equal on both sides at all times. Very typical or very simple example of diffusion, something that you experience in everyday life. If you were to place something, some dye or perhaps sugar or any substance inside of water, for example, then that water where it is dropped, the location where it is dropped, the dye, wherever it is dropped, that is where you have a high concentration of the particles or the molecules. And eventually, as you can see in 2, it will start to spread out. And then it will eventually spread completely throughout the container until you reach an equilibrium. Similarly, if you are in the room and you spray a perfume, at the other end of the room, if you have someone else there, the person will not smell the perfume immediately. The perfume, the scent of the particles in the perfume will move very slowly, and eventually the entire room will have that scent of that perfume. So diffusion is something that we experience every day in our life. So plants, they also have different uh, ways in which they experience diffusion. For example, we talked about the stoma in a previous lesson. So the stoma is a pore, and that pore is allowing the movement of gases in and out of the leaves. So carbon dioxide may enter into the leaves, or carbon dioxide can also exit the leaf, depending on which side of the leaf, whether inside of the leaf have higher concentration or outside have higher concentration. In this particular image, it's showing that carbon dioxide is entering into the leaf. So if carbon dioxide is entering into the leaf, it means that inside of the leaf have less carbon dioxide, and outside of the leaf, which is the atmosphere, would have more carbon dioxide. If, however, the inside of the leaf had more carbon dioxide and outside had less carbon dioxide, the movement would be in the opposite direction. The carbon dioxide will move from in the leaf to out of the leaf. A similar explanation can be done for oxygen movement. Next, we're looking at osmosis. Osmosis deals particularly with the movement of water molecules. So when we talk about the movement of water molecules, we are referring to osmosis. The movement occurs through selectively permeable membrane. And the cell membranes have selectively permeable membrane. So osmosis occurs through the selectively permeable membrane, and it also occurs along a concentration gradient. So osmosis is a movement. You can put it in this definition. Osmosis is a movement of water molecules through a selectively permeable membrane along a concentration gradient. And as I mentioned before, the concentration gradient means that it will move from where you have a high concentration to where you have a low concentration. And you can refer to this for water, high to a low water potential. All right, so the two terms that I want you to be a little bit familiar with. These are dilute solution and concentrated solution. When you say a solution is dilute, it means that it has mostly water. So you have a glass of water and you may have a few drops, maybe 3-4 drops of sugar. Concentrated solution is where you have plenty of the solute. For example, if you have a concentrated sugar solution, you may have several spoons of sugar in a half glass of water. Whereas in dilute solution, you have a few drops of the grains of the sugar in a large glass of water. So concentration again means you have less water, and dilute means you have more water. So look at this image. On the left, you can see that you have concentrated sugar solution. So if you have concentrated sugar solution, it means, as I said before, concentrated means you have less water. The blue circles are referring to the water solution, to the water particles, sorry, the water molecules. And the red circles are referring to sugar molecules. So on the concentrated sugar solution side, you have mostly sugar molecules. And on the dilute sugar solution, you have mostly water molecules. So what will happen if you put on a membrane between them? You put a partially or semi-permeable membrane. This is what will happen. The water molecules will move from where you have less to where you have, where you have more to where you have less. So you had more water molecules on the right side, which would be a dilute solution, and you had less on the concentrated solution. So the water molecules, as you can see, the blue circles move from the right side to the left side. And on the second diagram, you would see that the water molecules are evenly distributed throughout that image that you're seeing. This is a very important concept that you should understand as well. We can have 3 scenarios, and 3 different things could happen to the cells. We have isotonic solution on the left. We have hypotonic solution on the middle. And on the right of your image, you have hypertonic solution. What does isotonic mean? It means that you're placing a cell in an environment where the outside concentration of water is equal to the inside concentration of water. So let's say for that animal cell, if you place it in an isotonic solution, I'm going to use an example of percentage. Using percentage, it means that outside of the cell, you may have 5% of water, and inside of the cell, you have 5% of water. So the water is not really moving a lot. Similarly for the plant cell, if you have it in an isotonic solution, same definition, same explanation here. It means that outside of the cell and inside of the cell have equal concentrations of the water molecules. In the middle, we have hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution meaning that you are placing the cell in a solution that has very small or very low concentration of water. All right, so let me go over that. Hypotonic means that you're placing the cell in a solution that is very dilute. It's very dilute. It has lots of water in it. And if you place a cell in that condition, well, then a lot of water will enter into the cell because the outside environment have a high concentration of water. So the water will enter into the cells. What we mean by low concentration at the top there is that we have a low concentration of salt solution. So if you have less salt, it means you have more water. So again, if you place a cell in hypotonic solution, then the water will enter into the cell and cause the cell to swell. In animal cell, the cell will burst. It will start to swell and eventually burst. And we say lysing occurs. In plant cell, what will happen is that the cell becomes turgid. It will not burst. And the reason for this is because the cell contains cell wall. Then we have hypertonic solution. Hypertonic solution meaning that the solution have plenty of salt. So if the solution have plenty of salt or plenty of sugar, it means that it has less water. So if you place a cell in a solution that is concentrated with salt, has lots of salt solution in it, well then the water will come out of the cell, because it means that inside of the cell have more water and outside of the cell have less water. So the water will move from the cell to the outside environment. The cell will obviously shrink, and there's a special term that you use for this for plant cells. You say that they are plasmolized. The cells become flaccid. As you would see in a plant, the plant leaves will fall downwards. So I hope with this short explanation, you understand the difference between isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic solution. Isotonic, equal concentration in and out. Hypotonic means you're placing the cell in a solution that is very dilute. Whereas in hypertonic, you're placing the cell in a solution that is very concentrated and has lots of salt or sugar molecules. To focus on plants, what happens in plants? Isotonic solution. If you place the cell in it, normal cell, it doesn't really swell or becomes flaccid. In hypotonic solution, you place the cell in it, water will enter into the cell. And when water enters the cell becomes turgid. Whereas in hypertonic solution, the cytoplasm will shrink from the cell wall, and that is called plasmolysis. Finally, we are going to look now at active transport. Active transport has to do with the movement of molecules and ions, also across a selectively permeable membrane. But there's a difference, and the difference is that it is a movement against a concentration gradient. So if you're going to move against a concentration gradient, you would need energy. So this is a two difference between active transport and the other processes that we looked at. It's going against the concentration gradient and it requires energy. So in this diagram here, we're showing that we have a low concentration. However, although we have a low concentration, the molecules are going to move to a higher concentration. So this image is a very nice one to show the concentration gradient. We're showing that it's moving from a low concentration to a high concentration. Just think about it. Just look at this diagram and think about this scenario. Imagine you have a ball and you place it at the location where you have high concentration and you release that ball. That ball will flow down or move or slide down very easily. You do not have to provide any energy to it. But if you want to move that ball from low concentration and take it up to high concentration, well then it's not going to be so easy. You're going to need energy. So this diagram is a very good one to explain the concentration gradient concept. Let us look at this practical example. Let us assume that outside of the root of the plant, outside of it, have 5 milligrams of magnesium. Now, magnesium is very, very important. Magnesium is important to make chlorophyll. And you should know how important chlorophyll is. Without chlorophyll, then the plant cannot absorb sunlight. The plant can't make its own food. So let's say we have 5% of magnesium outside of the root of the plant. And inside of the root of the plant, we have 20 milligrams of magnesium. Well, if you think about it, you might want to assume that, okay, you have 20 inside and you have 5 outside. So obviously it will move from a high concentration to a low concentration. That's diffusion. From 20 milligram, you will lose the magnesium and the magnesium will come out of the plant. It doesn't make sense. The plant needs the magnesium. Why would the plant want to lose magnesium? So what the plant will do is that it will use some amount of energy and it will take that 5 milligram. It will continue to take more and more magnesium. So even though the plant does not have, even though the outside have a low concentration, the plant is still using a system to take in that small amount that is available. And that will obviously work in the benefit of the plant. All right, so that's it for active transport. Here are some additional examples. Again, I want to just review the 3 concepts. Osmosis, diffusion, you're talking about the movement of molecules. You do not need, it doesn't have to do with the movement through semi-permeable membrane and so forth. So examples, we have gas exchange through the stomata. And in human beings and animals, we have gas exchange occurring in the alveolus all of the time. So diffusion is something all around us and we're experiencing it on a daily basis. Then we have osmosis. It is the uptake of water by root hairs. So that's an example of it, the uptake of water by root hairs. And even in our kidney, on a daily basis, our kidney is taking up water through the process of osmosis. And active transport, it occurs even in our intestines. Sometimes it happens in our intestines when we have a lot of nutrients inside of the intestines, in the blood vessels, but yet our body continue to take more of the nutrients. It also happens in the roots of plants, as we mentioned before. So this brings us to the end of this lesson. And if you have any questions regarding the tree that we looked at, please do not hesitate to ask any question.